Chelsea FC has been put up for sale as a result of the government targeting Russian oligarchs predominantly living in London, one of whom is Roman Abramovich, the present Chelsea owner. Abramovich had his assets frozen last week, which is what everyone expected to happen eventually. However, few, including myself, actually realised what the consequences of seizing his assets would be, because he is, of course, he owns 100% of Chelsea Football Club. What this means is that at present, the club cannot process any transactions whatsoever for as long as it continues to be listed as an asset of Abramovich. This means they cannot sell tickets to supporters, they cannot sell merchandise, they cannot pay their staff and players, they cannot make offers for other players or offer new contracts to their present players. This isn't good because, well, in Chelsea's case, several players are out of contract in the summer, and their shirt sponsor, Free, suspended their sponsorship of the club. The club has, I believe, according to I can't remember who it was, but it was a journalist in the Daily Telegraph. According to him, the club has enough money to last for 3 weeks or more before it becomes insolvent. This is Chelsea Football Club we're talking about. Once a bid is accepted, if it's to happen soon, it usually takes apparently around 5 to 6 weeks to process a club takeover. And for obvious reasons, the UK government is directly involved in who should be allowed to take the reins from Abramovich. I've been doing some research into what's going on with that since we move on to the next one. The UK government has reportedly have their preferred party to buy Chelsea Football Club as the deadline for offers to come in approaches. The deadline is supposed to be this coming Friday. That's 2 days from now. The offer under consideration is apparently from the consortium led by American Todd Boehly. Anyone heard of him? Have you heard of him?
No,
nor have I. Who is joined by Swiss billionaire Hans-Jörg Wyss. I haven't heard of him either. But apparently the pair met up last week with their offer having already gone in. This is according to the Swiss reporter who broke the news about their interest, Nicola Emfeld, and we can get his tweet up here. After some talks over the weekend in Los Angeles with Todd Boehly, Swiss billionaire Hans-Jörg Wyss is right now on his way back to Boston. It's unclear what the two of them discussed. The bid to acquire Chelsea is already in, but no deal will happen this week. Well, if no deal happens this week, that's not good news, obviously, because of how urgent this is. But yeah, apparently there was a bid from a Saudi consortium as well. If we actually get the next clip up here, a Saudi consortium was interested in making a bid of around 2.6 billion, with the asking price being 3 billion.
This is kind of ridiculous because not only have the UK government set a precedent of seizing assets of people basically not convicted of any crimes at all. They've just been like, you are Russian, therefore now your stuff belongs to us, which is pretty awful. Mm-hmm. They're now just like, yes, Saudis, these are the people who we really want.
These are our new best friends.
Great.
Because they're our greatest and most happen to be our most plausible oil partners.
So stupid. Why have they done this in the first place?
But the UK government apparently wasn't interested in this proposal. This bid from the American consortium that I've already mentioned is far from a done deal. Apparently a British property developer called Nick Candy is still interested in making a bid, and if he does, in my view, he'd almost certainly be a better fit, given that he is, well, for a start, actually British and a lifelong Chelsea supporter, most importantly. But Sky Reports says a Chelsea fan, has been working to put together a consortium to buy the club and has held talks with former British and Liverpool and British Airways chairman Sir Martin Broughton, another lifelong Blues fan, about such a deal. He has promised to give Chelsea fans a seat on its board, which is promising, if his bid to buy Stamford Bridge is successful. This is, of course, the one I hold out the most hope for. But let's move on to what's been going on the ground level at the club, as in on the pitch. Chelsea played their Premier League match against Newcastle at the weekend at Stamford Bridge and scraped a 1-0 victory. However, there is apparently doubt over whether their next match, a Champions League fixture against Lille, due to be played tonight, I'm led to believe, is going to go ahead. And as you can see, things are so bad, apparently, that one of our forwards, Kai Havertz, has offered to pay for the travel costs to France. Yeah. I mean, when I first saw this video, at the top it did actually say Havertz willing to pay, but anyway. Chelsea won the first leg 2-0. So there's of course a strong motive to play to at least play the second leg. But of course, then we have no way of covering the travel costs in France. But of course, Kai Havertz seems to be willing to foot the bill according to this. There is, of course, prize money to be won at every stage in the Champions League, which is, of course, another reason why Chelsea urgently want to participate, because they are leading the tie after all. If we scroll down a little bit, you'll be able to see the table for the payout for the teams for the whenever they get through to the next round. So as you can see, 10.6 million euros is available for Chelsea should they qualify for the quarter-final tonight. Of course, they won't be able to access this money because they can't process any transactions whatsoever, but I'm presuming that UEFA will hold onto it for them. So Chelsea, put simply, as I've said in the title, are very much a club in the wars at the moment. So this isn't just a financial issue. If we move on to the next tweet, as I said last week, John Terry, ex-Chelsea captain, tweeted this and came under considerable fire for it, as you can see from the comments below. But other than the comments below, just to give some context, he was absolutely castigated by Chris Bryant for apparently, I don't know, he in effect all but actually accused him of, yeah, you see that. I mean, how cynical was that? Do you seriously think that this is what John Terry is doing? I mean, he's played for Chelsea. He played for Chelsea for 16 years, where every year except ever since he was captain, was under the directorship of Roman Abramovich. He's got some very, very positive sentiments attached to that era. Why wouldn't you want to celebrate your departing owner?
There's also several layers of absurdity to this, in that, as far as I understand it, Abramovich was a pretty good owner. He
was one of the best, in fact.
He gave over lots of money, and I mean, surely if
he actually invested in the club.
Yeah, that's what you want from an owner. It doesn't matter what his ethnicity is, whether he's Russian or not. It wasn't like it was Abramovich that masterminded the invasion. Yeah, he was. Isn't he based in the UK in the first place?
He is, and I do believe he has since returned to Russia.
Well, I'm not surprised when the UK government's seizing all of his assets.
No, but we know we know that he was closely affiliated with Vladimir Putin. We don't understand the nature of that relationship now. We definitely do not know his precise position on the Ukraine situation. He released a club statement basically saying that he thought what was going on was awful, and of course this was a club statement. Which said that, look, we're going to be investing the proceeds into relief for Ukraine for victims in the invasion in Ukraine, but that wasn't good enough for many of the football pundits. You clamped down to say that he basically hasn't said Putin's scum, and that's what and as a result, Chelsea's a scum club. And this unfortunately has almost become the zeitgeist of sports broadcasting at the moment, as we're going to see in a minute. I mean, look, Abramovich was a good owner for Chelsea as far as I'm concerned. He deserves respect for that at the very least, and I think we can keep politics out of this for good reason. But Chelsea, having got through to the next stage of the FA Cup, sent a request to their opponent Middlesbrough. This is, of course, at the point where they can't actually sell tickets, asking if they can play the match behind closed doors. And to say the least, this did not go down very well at all. And the Telegraph reads, Chelsea have been forced into an embarrassing climb down over a request to play their FA Cup quarter-final behind closed doors after coming under attack from the government, but also in a section of their own fans. The club made the request in an attempt to put pressure on the government to amend the operating licence imposed on them as part of the sanctions placed on Abramovich, who has now also been sanctioned by the EU, with UEFA trying to clarify what impact that may have on Wednesday's Champions League game with Lille, after the deadline is to sell tickets for the Middlesbrough game was missed. But it proved to be a spectacular PR own goal, as Chelsea's statement, in which they confirmed they had asked the Football Association for the tie to be played without fans present to protect sporting integrity, was met with widespread anger across the game and in Whitehall, which eventually forced the club to withdraw the request. Among the furious responses were a senior government source labelling Abramovich as linked to a warmonger and claiming Chelsea's action shows they do not seem to understand the seriousness of the situation they are in. Okay. Middlesbrough chairman Steve Gibson described Chelsea's request as abhorrent and described them as a rotten football club. Former player, this is the most disappointing part, Graham Lasso labelled it as the most embarrassing statement to come out of the club. Okay, it may be embarrassing, but the situation for Chelsea at the moment is pretty blimmin' desperate. They're facing insolvency in the next 3 weeks. You can't really blame them for trying everything possible to try to do what's right for them, to get them out of a very difficult situation. The comments from Steve Gibson, as far as I'm concerned, are just flat out virtue signalling. When how can you say that this is enough for Chelsea to qualify as a scum club in and of itself? Like, is it one decision?
I don't really understand this. This is just jumping on the bandwagon.
No, that's exactly what it is.
Virtue signalling of it.
Yeah, but unfortunately, Chelsea fans have been on the receiving end of the hostility as well. Before I explain more, let's listen to the following clip. This is a clip of Chelsea on an away day to Burnley last week, a match which they won 4-0. This is the fans acting in solidarity with Ukraine.
He's got the power to know you're in the struggle. Always believing in Roman Abramovich, Roman Abramovich, Roman Abramovich, Roman Abramovich.
Yeah.
So the fans clearly like him.
So the fans clearly like Roman Abramovich, and of course made their voices heard on that. But unfortunately, Boris Johnson took issue with their passion for their objectively very, very successful owner, and he basically said it was completely inappropriate for them to chant Abramovich's name.
Right.
Yeah, despite him being the club owner for what was it? I mean, how long ago? What, nearly 20, just short of 20 years, having delivered them, I don't know, 5 Premier League titles, 2 Champions Leagues, one of which was last year. Basically provided them with the greatest era in the club's history, the era that arguably makes their history in many ways. Of course, they stretch back far, far further, but this is without question the most prosperous, memorable era in the club's legacy. Why wouldn't the fans celebrate him? And why does their celebration of him have to immediately be interpreted as a political message that somehow encroaches on the solidarity with Ukraine? We quite clearly heard the support from the fans for just that message of solidarity of what's going on for the Ukrainians. Like why does there have to be this hypostatization between Abramovich support and not hating Abramovich and solidarity for Ukraine?
It's really strange that people can't see the difference between being from a country and disagreeing with their government and supporting it wildly. I mean, he lives in the UK. He went out of his way to make clear that, don't agree with this, and he's still being punished.
But why is Boris Johnson getting involved?
I don't know. It clearly
Does
seems
he even
to
like
me,
football?
I don't know. But it seems to me to clearly be the fact that they're trying to appear as being as hard on Russia without actually doing anything. So they've seized the assets of people who are completely uninvolved, but they're also not willing to risk any intervention, which, fair enough. However, don't try and posture yourself as being this hardline, yes, we're doing everything in our power, when you're basically persecuting people who have nothing to do with it. Yes.
But thankfully, the Chelsea manager, Thomas Tuchel, despite the fact that he fought, just to offer some context, some Chelsea fans were found booing when the 1 minute expression of solidarity with Ukraine was going on. That wasn't heard in the clip that we saw, but it was going on. I heard it in other clips. He actually said that he thought that was inappropriate, a bad time to kind of express partisanship, if you like. But he backed up the supporters by saying that Boris Johnson, by pointing the finger at their celebration of Abramovich, has got his priorities wrong. So the Standard reads Tuchel has himself been critical of the club supporters when chanting for Abramovich during a minute's applause for victims of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, as I've said, ahead of the game at Burnley earlier this month. But he suggested Johnson's focus should be elsewhere after the PM's spokesperson made a point of telling fans to stop vocalising their support for the oligarch owner. He suggested that Johnson's focus should be elsewhere after... that's the same bit. I heard about it some minutes ago, said Tuchel on Tuesday. I don't know if in these times this is those important subjects to be discussed in Parliament. Yes, whether Chelsea fans should actually be saying goodbye to their owner. Where is he wrong?
Well, yeah. I mean, under ordinary circumstances, isn't the sale of a club like a long and drawn out process as well? By forcing it to be so sudden, they're potentially going to destroy the very thing that they are seeking to preserve, supposedly anyway. Yeah,
I do often wonder whether those who have it in for Abramovich in particularly the Labour side, are actually just closet Arsenal supporters that want to see Chelsea die.
It's an entirely possible. I mean, most of the Labour Party is based in London, right? So
Yeah, they are.
They're the local
I imagine
rivals.
Jeremy Corbyn, Arsenal supporters, are all for this. I imagine. I mean, he hasn't actually vocalised that nonetheless. But Chris Bryant, I have to ask what team he supports. I don't know what's got his bee in his bonnet about Abramovich. Of course, again, I get the fact that we need to clamp down on Russian oligarchs. What is this obsession around Abramovich?
Well, it's one of those things where even the terminology used, like many people in the West have got their money through ill-gotten gains and are ridiculously wealthy, and we don't refer to them as oligarchs, but anyone who's wealthy in Russia gets called an oligarch. And maybe, it's fair. I've not really looked into the finances of any of them. It's just the change in language. Just anyone who's wealthy in Russian immediately or
there is the implicit assumption that if you're Russian and you happen to be rich, you must have got that money badly or through bad means.
Well, I mean, to be fair, when the Soviet Union collapsed and they did the bonds for the state industries in privatising them, they did get hoovered up by just one person in many industries. And so a case can be made that
that's a very fair point, actually. But to conclude, and then of course we'll move on to the video comments. Please stop beating Chelsea while they're down. I know they're a club that everyone loves to hate, but they are potentially facing, probably not, but potentially facing an existential crisis, at least if they don't find a bidder soon. Cut us some slack, please.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast, The Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content we have on the site, such as this interview Carl did with Dr. Gunnar Beck of the AFD in Germany. And if you want to follow him on Getter, of course you can. And if we go to the next one, you can see that he is at Getter at Gunnar_Beck. Thank you and goodbye.